recommending a demotion for a retired three-star general for his role in the events. After 7 investigations into the incident, the Army says there's no evidence of intent to deceive the public or the Tillman family. This is about 30 minutes.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Tony Kukalo, Chief Army Public Affairs. Today's briefing will detail the steps taken by Secretary of the Army Pete Guerin, and the results were reviewed by the Commanding General of the U.S. Army Training and Doctrine Command, General William Wallace, into the reports supporting the death of Army Ranger Pat Tillman. This includes the March 26, 2007 DOD Inspector General's report into matters related to the 2004 friendly fire death, as well as the related investigation by U.S. Army Criminal Investigation Command. Secretary of the Army, Mr. Pete Guerin, and the Army Vice Chief of Staff, General Richard Cody, each have a brief statement, and then we'll take your questions. In addition, we also have with us a panel of experts, should we need to refer to them for questions. With us, we have Special Agent Frederick Stonecipher of the United States Army Criminal Investigation Command, Lieutenant Colonel Jerome Casero, Army Military Awards Branch, Mr. Dennis Frangeli, who is from our Casualty and Mortuary Affairs branch, and Colonel Chuck Petey from the Judge Advocate Generals. And again, they're available should questions come up in their specialties. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, our Secretary of the Army, Mr. Guerin, and our Vice Chief of Staff, General Cody.
Thank you, General Kukalo. Thank all of you for being here today. On April 22nd, 2004, at 6:45 p.m., Army Ranger Pat Tillman was killed in the outskirts of the tiny village of Magara, Afghanistan. He was killed by his fellow Rangers, whom he had risked his life to save. Today, 3 years and 3 months later, we present to you the results of the Wallace investigation into the tragic death of Corporal Pat Tillman, one of the multiple investigations that became necessary because of mistakes and misjudgments made by the Army in the days following his death and the follow-on reviews of those failings. Errors and failures of leadership that confused and misinformed the American people and compounded the grief suffered by the Tillman family. The errors we made not only led to additional investigations, but also created in the mind of many a perception that the Army intended to deceive the public and the Tillman family about the circumstances of Corporal Tillman's death. Many have come to believe that the Army manipulated that tragedy to serve ends other than the pursuit of truth, deceiving a grieving family and violating our duty to a fallen comrade. Considering the constellation of errors, this perception of deceit is understandable, but it is not supported by the facts found in the multiple investigations, including the DOD IG report and the recent review completed by General Wallace. The Wallace investigation confirmed the results of the DOD IG report on this key point. The soldiers who handled the investigation and family notification made many mistakes. They did not follow Army regulations nor DOD policy, but they did so unknowingly with no intent to deceive. They had evidence of fratricide and initiated a friendly fire investigation the day after Corporal Tillman's death with the intention of finding the truth and releasing their results upon completion. Mistakenly, they conducted their work believing that they were to keep all information close hold, including keeping it from the family, until the investigations were complete and approved by higher authority. The soldiers on the ground kept their chain of command fully informed. Almost incredibly, but true, this misunderstanding of Army regulations and policy about secrecy was shared up and down the chain of command, up to and including Lieutenant General Kinsinger, Commanding General of the U.S. Army Special Operations Command. As a result, the truths ultimately uncovered by their investigations were kept from the Tillman family and the public for a month, while misinformation went unchallenged and uncorrected. They conducted the investigation with a plan to release the results upon conclusion, undermining any notion that there was a conspiracy on their part to deceive the public. The misperception of deceit was compounded by questions surrounding the award of Corporal Tillman's Silver Star and erroneous information disseminated in the hours immediately following his death. Sadly, these lingering questions have obscured and detracted from Corporal Tillman's undisputed heroism, which is in itself a tragedy. Corporal Tillman died going to the aid of his fellow Rangers who were under enemy attack, and his actions saved the life of the man next to him and possibly others. The Army did not make Pat Tillman a hero. His actions made Pat Tillman a hero. An overused term, but there was a perfect storm of mistakes, misjudgments, and a failure of leadership that brought us where we are today. With the Army's credibility in question about a matter that strikes at the very heart of Army Corps values, our commitment to our fallen soldiers and their grieving families, soldiers' loyalty to fallen soldiers. Following the release of the IG report, I directed General Scott Wallace, a veteran battlefield commander and four-star general, to review all the findings of the IG report and consider issues of accountability. He reviewed all of the previous investigations and the accompanying evidence and testimony and passed judgment on the officers identified by the DOD IG and one additional officer. He reviewed the conduct of 10 officers, took action against 7, including 4 general officers. Let me briefly discuss the actions concerning Brigadier General Nixon and Colonel Bailey, then Colonel Nixon and Lieutenant Colonel Bailey, who were named in the DOD IG report and figured prominently in the situation on the ground in Afghanistan. Each received written counseling from General Wallace in the form of a memorandum of concern. Brigadier General Nixon, the regimental commander, made errors, although unknowingly, by keeping the fratricide investigation close hold and not informing his own staff. Brigadier General Nixon did, however, timely notify General Kinzinger, USASOC commander, and Major General Stanley McChrystal, JTF commander, of Corporal Tillman's death and his initiation of a friendly fire investigation. Wallace determined that Colonel Bailey, the battalion commander, who received a memorandum of concern, he received it because of his handling of punishment against the Rangers involved in the shooting of Corporal Pat Tillman. Had nothing to do with the investigation of Tillman's circumstances of his death, other than the conduct of the Rangers in firing upon Tillman's position. Both of these officers were forthcoming in the reviews of their actions and were found innocent of any attempt to cover up the truth in the Tillman matter. Both were in the war zone in Afghanistan and kept their leaders back home regarding Pat Tillman's death and the friendly fire investigation fully informed. Additionally, Brigadier General Farrisee, U.S. Army Director of Military Personnel Management, who was not among the 9 officers identified in the DOD IG report, but she was included by General Wallace in his investigation. General Wallace learned of a telephone call between General Farrisee and the Armed Forces Medical Examiner regarding inconsistencies in preliminary reports on the death of Corporal Tillman. General Wallace concluded that General Farrisee failed to follow up and ensure that the Armed Forces Medical Examiner concerns were properly resolved. Although not directly a part of the issues raised by the DOD IG report or other investigations, General Wallace provided written counseling to General Farrisee through a memorandum of concern. General Wallace did find a senior official, Lieutenant General Kinzinger, the senior leader in the administrative chain of command for the 75th Ranger Regiment, found him guilty of deception, not in the handling of the friendly fire investigations or in the reporting of Corporal Tillman's death, but in later investigations, one which was 7 months later after Corporal Tillman's death, and the second time was in the DOD IG investigation 2 years later. General Wallace concluded that Lieutenant General Kinzinger deceived investigators about what he knew and when he knew it. He made false official statements, but that his deception played no role in the key events and the misunderstandings and misinformation immediately following Corporal Tillman's death. Wallace found further that Kinzinger failed in his duty to inform the family about the friendly fire incident in a timely manner as required by Army regulations. He failed to appoint a required safety board to investigate the tragedy as required by Army regulations, and he failed to inform the acting Secretary of the Army of the investigation into friendly fire. For the other officers, consistent with the